Joining us now, we have Terry Collins and Svetlana Boriskina.
Perfect.
Good to see you both. Now, you're both taking part in a forum which will try to answer the question, are plastics a friend or foe as we strive towards energy sustainability? That is, of course, a complicated question. What are some of the factors that you'll be looking into at this session? And Svetlana, I'll start with you.
Well, I happen to believe that plastics are our friends, but like in every friendship, you actually have to work on it to make it work. And there is a reason why there are so many plastics around, because they're so great at many things and they're replacing a lot of other products. But of course, there are some downsides to it because, for example, they are so cheap to make. There is no incentive for many people to recycle them because you cannot get your money back. But strangely enough, that's an argument for having more plastic than less, because then it becomes more incentive to actually recycle it into some other new products.
Now, Terry, not to oversimplify, but friend or foe?
They're foe.
Foe, okay.
Yep.
Why is that?
Well, because they are utterly unsustainable. People view plastics as materials rather than as sponges for chemicals. And so both the material elements and the chemical elements of plastics are extremely problematic. We have a whole range of plastics. They're not all the same. Some are absolutely categorical foes. In other words, if we do not deal with the plastics, they represent an existential threat to the future of our species and practically everything living on the Earth, certainly that has an endocrine system.
Now, we tend to think of plastics and their role in the environment as we currently know plastics, but are there efficiencies out there still to be discovered that might change the equation in terms of making plastics a more sustainable commodity?
So they're not recyclable as much as people want to think that they are because of the endocrine disrupting chemicals that are present in the plastics. What we need to do is to reinvent plastics. We need to get new plastics that degrade quickly in the environment, are compostable, etc., but that do not have the extraordinary, dramatic impacts of endocrine disruptors. Chemicals that at teeny tiny concentrations in people induce low-dose adverse effects. We need to remember Western man is going sterile very quickly. Most young males in the West will be sterile by 2040.
Because of plastic?
Because, I believe, primarily because of endocrine disrupting chemicals, and plastics is one of the major sources.
Svetlana, agree or disagree?
I don't disagree that there are different kinds of plastics, and I do agree that some of them might be really bad. But it doesn't mean that all of them are bad, and actually a lot of plastics are very neutral by themselves. That's why they are so great as protecting everything else, like food and ourselves, against harsh conditions. It's what you add to them that's what makes them dangerous, and that's where you need to be careful. And some plastics don't need anything to be added to them. Actually, some plastics can be re-engineered, so you avoid adding stuff that you would need to add to other materials, and you actually reduce pollution that way. And if you look overall at the pollution, plastics are actually more sustainable if you don't look at that one nasty aspect.
That one thing.
Yeah, right.
Complicated friendship.
Yeah, but if you look through the whole life cycle, they actually produce less pollution to make and get rid of, because nothing just comes out of thin air, right? Like Harry Potter style. To make something else, you actually still need to pollute. Like to grow cotton, you need a lot of water, you need fertilizer, and there is a lot of CO2 produced in the process. So nothing is clean. And plastics are actually cleaner than other things, and we just need to work to make them even cleaner.
Now, you spoke to this earlier. The appeal of plastic in large part is their affordability. How do you weigh the potential impacts of political and social upheaval into that discussion?
I think there was a lot of social upheaval in the good way, because a lot of people got access to food and other commodities that they didn't before because of plastics. Because now you can deliver food to places where it cannot survive because there is no refrigerator, for example. So it was actually a great force for good. But again, now a lot of plastic products are considered to be cheap, and they are cheap. But as we develop plastics and make plastic products more good and more upscale, they will have more value, they will be recycled more, and they will be valued more as a result. So that's the way forward.
Now, Terry, what are some of the other aspects of this topic that you expect to cover? And I imagine there's a lot of ground to cover with this.
Yeah, there is. There's no free lunch. You can have short-term economic benefits, but long-term devastation. There's just no question. Fundamentally, so I'm a chemist, I would say the chemical enterprise simply does not understand and is playing the ostrich with endocrine disruption, the mechanisms by which chemicals at teeny tiny doses disrupt development and change the outcome of development. And so we are paying a terrible price. It's not for plastics. Plastics are part of the problem. It's the chemicals that have these properties. It's some plastics, the actual polymer itself is a problem. So if it's polycarbonate, bisphenol A leaches. It's made from bisphenol A with just a couple of linkers. And when you put that in a landfill, the bisphenol A leaches right back. Bisphenol A is an estrogen. The estrogenicity of landfill leachate around the world is absolutely astonishing because of leakage of bisphenol A as the polycarbonate plastic hydrolyzed.
This is a very lively discussion and a contentious issue. Do you expect the forum to be very exciting and very lively as well?
We certainly hope so.
Well,
yeah,
we're friends. We're friends. We become friends already. But I mean, it's a fabulous discussion because it gets at the key of what chemicals are about in terms of their contributions to the human experience.
And it's much simpler much more complicated rather than simply saying friend or foe, as you mentioned. There's so much that goes into this. Thank you very much for both of your time. It was fascinating to talk to you.
Thank you.
And they're still friends.
We are.
We actually do agree more than disagree. So.
Excellent.